Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency meeting for Wednesday, December 9th. Good morning, everyone. Please join me in flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Baker. Here. Hesh. Here. Nader. Here. Nesbitt. Here. Rohan.
Here.
Breslin.
Here.
Trevis. Here. Euler.
Here.
Thank you. Moving on to
Remembered me.
Yeah.
The name was too far.
I am somebody. She remembered me.
moving on to item C, approval of minutes from our October 28th, 2015 meeting.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Moving on to item number D, agenda review. Are there any modifications to the agenda at this time? No? Anyone in the audience? Nothing? Okay. We are moving on to item E, public comment. Public comment on anything that is not on the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to speak at this time? Seeing none, we will move on to item F, and we have the consent calendar.
I move consent.
Second.
We have a first and a second on the consent calendar. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? None? Motion passes. At this time, we're going to adjourn as the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency and convene as the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. And our first item is G, and that's the consent calendar. So I entertain a motion at this time.
I move consent.
So we have a first and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? None? Motion passes. This time, we're going to adjourn as the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Service Agency and convene as the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. And our first item is item H. It's I-80, 65 Interchange Improvements Project.
Good morning, Chair Rustlin and members of the board. As many of you are aware, we've been working on the environmental document for the Interstate 80 State Route 65 interchange over the past almost 5 years. And in February of 2011, a consultant contract was signed between PCTPA and CH2M Hill, and that current budget is approximately $3.3 million. In January of 2013, the PCTPA board concurred with 5 alternatives to be carried forward in the environmental document. And at that time, it was believed that the environmental phase could be completed within budget. Subsequently, our project development team identified a new alternative, the collector distributor system ramps, or alternative 2, and that required substantial consultant effort to not only develop that alternative but also update studies for the environmental document. So the consultant team is currently working on response to comments on the environmental document, which was released in August of this year, but additional budget is going to be needed to complete the environmental phase. So staff is requesting board authorization to negotiate and sign a budget adjustment of $151,000, about 4.5% of the existing contract with CH2M Hill, to complete the environmental phase. And funding would come from available savings on the I-80 bottleneck federal earmark, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
If I might add one more comment, one of the reasons that we added the collector-distributor alternative was that if those of you who are on the board at the time might recall that we had a couple of alternatives that were acceptable locally that would move the interchange to the east. And then there was also an alternative that Federal Highways was insisting on that would close the Taylor Road interchange. And so this was developed as a compromise, really a win-win, so that it addressed the Federal Highway concerns about the weaving movements and the spacing of the interchanges while still keeping Taylor Road open and functioning. So that's a little bit of background on that.
Thank you. This time, bring it to the board for any questions.
I don't have any questions.
Any questions? Anything from the public at this time? Seeing none, bring it back to the board for any comments or a motion at this time.
Motion to approve.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Moving on to item I-8065, Transportation Improvement Sequence and Study, and this is an information item.
So I'm going to be giving an update on the sequencing study results, the draft results that we have to date. And as I mentioned just in the last item, we've been working on the environmental document for the Interstate 80, State Route 65 interchange. We're also working on the environmental document for the State Route 65 widening project and also the I-80 auxiliary lanes. And then our local agencies and Caltrans are working on several projects along Interstate 80 and State Route 65. So we have a lot of projects going on along these corridors in South Placer County. And in 2014, Caltrans awarded us a grant to look at the sequencing or the order that these projects might be constructed. And we really have limited available funding, so most of these projects are going to have to be constructed in phases. And so the goal of the study is to look at the order that those phases would be constructed. And I want to introduce just briefly here Keith Rhodes from T.Y. Lin International. Right here. He is our consultant project manager who's been leading our project team. And if there's any specific questions as I go through the results, he's available to answer some of those questions. The study does include participation from the Federal Highway Administration, also Caltrans, PCTPA, City of Lincoln, Town of Loomis, City of Rockland, City of Roseville, and Placer County. So we have a pretty wide, diverse group here that we're all trying to agree on how these projects will be phased. And so 19 different project phases were identified by that project team, and then each project phase was evaluated using 12 performance criteria. And that performance criteria included things such as travel time, traffic congestion, economic development, goods movement, cost effectiveness, traffic safety, and several other criteria. And so the results of the study are actually shown in attachment 1. We've actually taken the 19 different project phases and we've grouped them into project types. So we have interchange improvement projects, freeway improvement projects, and then maintenance improvement projects. And as you can see at the top, under interchange improvement projects, Placer Parkway has been identified in Tier 1. And just to briefly explain here, within each project type, we've created tiers, and that's going to give us some flexibility to basically apply the available funding to certain projects instead of just having one project as the top priority. So you have Placer Parkway as Tier 1, and that's the connection from State Route 65 over to Foothills Boulevard. And then we have several local interchanges within Tier 2 and Tier 3. And then the slide you're seeing that's up for you is actually the freeway improvement projects. And what we're seeing here is the Tier 1 projects. And this is basically the first couple phases of the Interstate 80 State Route 65 interchange. And then we have the 5th lane on westbound Interstate 80 from Douglas Boulevard to Riverside Avenue. And then if we can go to the next slide, we have the Tier 2 projects. And this is basically several phases of projects that would complete the widening of State Route 65 up to Blue Oaks Boulevard. And if we go to the next slide, we have the Tier 3 projects. And this is the remaining phases of the Interstate 80 State Route 65 interchange, and then the widening of State Route 65 from Blue Oaks Boulevard up to Lincoln. And then lastly, we have the maintenance improvement projects, and Caltrans is planning on repaving State Route 65 all the way from Interstate 80 up to Lincoln. Lastly, attachment 2 is a fact sheet that the project team has developed, and we'll be utilizing that fact sheet to pursue discretionary funding for all these different various projects. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Just for clarification's purposes here, I'm not sure which mic I tried to turn on. Oh, it's not lighting up. We're live, okay. The segment on the map between Pleasant Grove and Blue Oaks shows up in that kind of burnt orange color, indicating that it's a Tier 3, yet the bubble pointing at it is in the blue color, indicating it's Tier 2.
Yeah, we actually have several projects that overlap that area across Tier 2 and Tier 3, so it's actually a red color there. But it was tried. We had so many colors going on in that area.
Okay.
But basically, the widening to Blue Oaks is part of Tier 2.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board at this time? No? Any questions, audience? Nothing? Okay, bring back. I really want to compliment you. It's a great visual, and it really speaks well to where we're moving and the phases. So, and also the second attachment as well. So, very nice. Thank you. Our next item is item J, and that's a presentation. It's Transportation Funding Strategy Status Update.
Yes, good morning, Chair Russlin, members of the board. I will be doing this presentation with Jeff Flint from FSB Core Strategies, who is our consultant working on this. And I think the board members are all aware that we've been really out in the community quite a lot since our last meeting, certainly in the last couple of months, to do the needed education and information sharing about our transportation situation and our funding situation, and the link between transportation, economic development, and our quality of life. So just to give you an update on some of the specifics we've been doing, we have our website up, the keepplacermoving.com website. We've been out on social media, of course. I have been... It feels like everywhere, maybe not literally, but I've been to all of the MACs except for Sheridan and rural Lincoln. There have been some scheduling challenges, so I'll be there in January. I've spoken to the Chambers of Commerce, the Republican Women's Group, the South Placer Women's Group, every Rotary Club, Lions Club, basically gatherings of more than 3 people, as well as a lot of one-on-one meetings. We have also did a presentation at the Focus on the Future conference, with which Jeff can talk a little bit more about. That is the annual conference of counties that have transportation sales taxes. It's very well attended by those who are interested in the kinds of projects that are funded by these things, and we ended up with a featured speaking session at the beginning of the conference, and even had a booth there to tell people about our transportation funding strategy and how well organized we are and focused on moving this forward and getting the word out. As the board knows, we did 2 sets of mailers, which we provided to you at the last board meeting, that were provided a lot of detail in, I think, an accessible way about transportation and funding and some of the issues going on, as well as invitations to our town hall meetings. We did a series of 6 of those at the beginning, in the first 3 weeks of November. They were really well attended. We had to add chairs at every single one of them. We had hundreds of people show up, all told, which was really gratifying. A lot of good questions, a lot of good issues, a lot of good discussion, and I know a lot of the board members attended one or more of those and got a feel for that. We have had quite a bit of response from our mailers. We've gotten a lot of emails on that. We've responded to every single one of them in detail, as well as the comment cards from the town hall meetings. We are starting to go through those, and those that are actual questions and that people provided contact information, we're responding to them as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff to talk a little bit more about the outcomes of the town hall meetings and some of the private sector outreach.
I think you gave the whole report.
Oh, well.
I'm kidding. I'll try to say something, but I'll be brief and then be available for questions. Good morning, board, chair, members. as your executive director reported, we did a couple of mailers. I want to particularly note and put an emphasis on the response on the emails and the town hall meetings. One of the objectives that I think when we started on this, really 2 years ago, if you think back, is force a conversation about the future of the county from a transportation infrastructure perspective. And this is not the culmination of it, but the next phase of it was this more direct phase of public outreach through the mailers and the town hall meetings. And I think the response has been exactly what you all and Celia would have hoped for, which is the hundreds of people that have emailed us back and came to the town hall meetings are interested in just a serious adult conversation about the transportation future of the county. We're not getting easy yeses or reflexive no's. People are coming to these meetings wanting to know, this is serious business. We want to have a conversation about it. What projects are in it? The natural question we've always said, what's in it for me? People want to know. They want to have conversations about what the future of the county looks like. And I think that's a good thing, because I think if people are thinking about this rationally and honestly about what county they want to live in over the next 20, 30 years, I think that speaks well to the direction that we're headed. I think for those of you, I know some of you made it to several, some have made it to one or two of the meetings, and you saw that. It's not that it's an easy sell. They're coming with good questions, and it means they're thinking about whether or not they want to have these transportation improvements, what it takes to pay for them, and whether they're willing to pay for them. And that's the kind of conversation at this stage of the outreach campaign we want them to be having. So I think that is all good and exactly where we want to be, and very much should be heartened by the strong interest in attendance, both in emails and attendance at the town halls. If nobody came, that would be a problem. That means they probably already made decisions, and that wouldn't be a good thing. In parallel, as Celia made a reference to, there's starting to be some organization on the private sector side. It's out of the scope of the work that we're doing, but we're aware of it, and we're monitoring and participating to the extent that we're invited to provide information at those meetings. Again, a couple of you have attended some of those meetings, and the good news is that we can report by observation that the private sector is paying attention to this. I think they're appreciative of the efforts that the agency has had to put together an expenditure plan and talk about that, and they're preparing for if ultimately this board and the cities and the Board of Supervisors decide to place this on the ballot. I think there is the strong beginnings of an effort by the private sector to make sure that once that work is done and the public agency's role is ended, that there will be a significant effort to communicate to the voters why they might want to support that effort. And so that is happening, again, independently to a certain extent from our work, but we have been asked on occasion to participate and provide information so that they can evaluate it, and I think those meetings have all been going very well. And then finally, I do want to talk also about, and to the extent that this sounds self-serving for me and my firm, or for your executive director, or for you all, it's not intended that way. But it may sound that way, so I apologize in advance for that. But at the Focus on the Future conference that Celia and I attended last month, there is the group of the aspiring counties, as she mentioned, that ones that are thinking about putting a self-help measure on the ballot. And there's probably 6 counties around the state that are seriously looking at it for 2016. And up and down, every person that we talked to, without fail, said that by far the Placer County effort is the most organized, the most comprehensive, the most ready for the ballot, have been doing the work. And again, to the extent that it sounds self-serving to you all and giving direction to your staff and making the brilliant decision to contract with us to work on this, that is, I think, a credit to all of us working on this, because there are counties that might be polling a little bit higher than us, and that's in part because of maybe their political demographics. We understand the challenge of doing this in a county like this, but without fail, people who monitor this stuff for a living, every single one of them praise Celia and her team for being the most organized, the furthest along, having the most fully developed expenditure plan, the most fully developed outreach plan. And that just brings a lot of confidence to the effort. Because, again, to the extent that people that are in the business of participating in those campaigns, when it becomes a more political and less public agency faction or effort, they don't have the resources to fund 6 campaigns in 6 counties around here. So they're going to look at the ones that are well organized and say, those people have their act together, they've taken care of what they need to locally, and when it's time for the private sector to step up, they're going to pick 3 or 4 out of those 6. And I think Placer County has positioned itself extremely well to be on that list. And we heard that over and over again. And that and again, I think that's again, pardon the self-promotion, but that's for all of us collectively. I think that's to the credit of this group of realizing that and getting organized 2 years ago and putting in the hard work and the meeting with anytime 3 people gather schedule that we've put Celia on, and that she smiles at every single one of them. So I do want to note that because it's important. There are people that are in the business of building roads that help pay for these campaigns and designing the roads and things like that, and they will make a decision on which of 3 or 4 out of those 6 that they want to participate in, and I think we're in good shape for that. So with that, I'll cut off and make myself available to questions. Any other comments you have?
Yes, I'm going to talk about some of the practical aspects, which is the expenditure plan. And we have, as we've been going out to the public, getting comments back on that, we've also been talking to economists to see if our revenue estimates are accurate. And we have received one report back from an economist at William Jessup University, who has provided us an estimate that is significantly higher than the one we've been working with. We are also working with the Sacramento State economist, who we're waiting on his report. But it is likely we will have a little bit more wiggle room within the expenditure plan to do some of the projects that came up as part of these town hall meetings, as part of this outreach. And some of those specifically are to do improvements to Baseline Road. That was a big one. In fact, I just got an email this morning that was about 2 pages long about, this is fine, but you've got to put in Baseline Road. And I think it's a compelling a project that should be in here, and I think there is room for that even under a conservative estimate. We've also gotten feedback about additional commuter bus service, which is one of the transit items that really is more cost effective and really helps our economy. Excuse me. As well as including that 5th lane on I-80, that auxiliary lane, those projects, because we have gotten a lot of comments about I-80, and certainly a lot of the focus has been on the 80-65 interchange and 65 widening, which are already part of that. And so, and as these estimates are maybe a smidge higher, we can add some projects, but also add more on a percentage basis. The proposal had been 30% going to the jurisdictions. If your basis is higher, your dollar amount is higher. So that could increase by as much as $100 million, which is an important component of this program to do road maintenance and those local hotspots that affect everyone. So that's what we're working on as we get this information, and that kind of leads us into the next steps. At this point, as part of our work program that this board has seen and approved, we are going to be doing some more polling in late January, maybe early February, and seeing where the public is at in terms of moving forward. And we expect to be presenting that to the board in February, as well as an updated expenditure plan. We should have those new estimates from the economists and provide that information to the board and see where we're at to hopefully to move forward on this. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions from the board at this time?
When you're conducting your public meetings, when folks raise objections, do they raise objections to the need or to the method of addressing the need?
Primarily, I think it's been on the method of addressing them. There, and it's all over the spectrum, but there are some folks that were saying, if you just put on more developer fees, there's candidly, we're kind of in the weeds on transportation funding, and I think when the public sees this, they say, well, why don't you just do this, that, and the other? And of course, if it were that easy, we would have done it. So we explain about the nexus requirement and what we've already done in terms of developer fees. And, there's been questions about growth. Why don't you just stop growing? And so it's a lot of just information, because people are they're in their cars driving around going, why is this like this? And if you can answer those questions, a lot of people are going, oh, okay, I get it. They may not like the reality, and thankfully they didn't shoot the messenger on some of these financial realities that, we don't like either. But I think that there was a greater understanding of them.
And I would add, in the if you want to broadly categorize people's responses in 3 boxes, there's sort of the I'll never pay more taxes no matter what, and there is the people who say I'm not excited but very willing to pay taxes because I really like these projects, and then the biggest category is I don't want to pay any more taxes, but this seems to make sense, and if there's no better way, then I'm willing to do it.
As long as there's something in it for me.
Right, and something in it for me. I would say there are more people in the inappropriately positive box than the inappropriately negative box. I would say in that there's probably, I'm going to, rough it, but, 20% in the sort of the no way ever, 25 to 30% in the probably too enthusiastic, certainly to my political philosophy on that, and then the biggest section is the middle is convince me and I'm willing to do it. And so, to the extent that, there's any surprise in that there's more in the enthusiastic than the anti-enthusiastic box. And a lot of the anti-enthusiasm, as Celia referenced, is either, not understanding the complexity in which everything gets financed, and sort of if the federal government stops wasting money on studying the mating habits of gnats in South Texas, then you could fund all of the roads in Placer County kind of comments. Yeah. And then the well, just stop letting people move here, including the people who said, I moved here 2 years ago and nobody else should be allowed to move here, and then the road problem would be solved. So, but again, I would say, I would characterize it as much better conversation about it than you might have expected going into this. People are taking it very seriously, which is a good thing.
Okay, thank you.
We have another question.
Yeah.
Eric?
I don't know if the light was working, so I didn't know.
Yeah.
Couple questions. I know we started, our initial response on this was in the low 50%. We've crawled into that 61 to 63%. Are we kind of stuck in that area now until you poll again, I guess?
Well, we don't know until you poll.
Okay. And forgive me, I've been remiss and I haven't really followed it. I know there was an effort to try to get the threshold change on the ballot. Did that die?
It died.
Yeah.
That was part of that special extraordinary session that the legislature, and, well, I shouldn't say it died. It is died for the year.
Right.
And I understand that the chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee wants to bring it up again. Okay. But, my reading of the tea leaves is don't hold your breath.
Yeah. If it arises again, I think we should pursue that aggressively, because that's an easier way to make up that difference, I think. And then the other thing is, and I know regardless of what we say on the blogs and people's responses are, no more taxes, we're just going to give more to those. Their perception is we're giving it to the state, where it's going to go to pet projects for governors or whatever. And how do we drive that message home that we'll be in control of these? I mean, regardless of the outreach we've done, I still have so many people go, I don't want to give the state any more money. You're not giving it to them.
Well, and that's always the challenge, is getting the message to everyone. And I mean, I think that message got through to people who were at the town hall meetings, people that read the mailers in detail, but that is really one of the struggles in terms of educating people.
I know whenever I've seen comments on the blogs, I've tried to respond and comment, but a week later, the same comment will come up. People they've got it in their heads that the taxes are just going to be wasted. So it's just seems important to simply somehow drive that message home.
Yes.
Any other questions at this time? Stan?
Just a comment. Last month I attended an event in Sacramento called Region Rising. It was a day-long event sponsored by Valley Vision and SACOG. There was a myriad of topics, but there was a lot of time spent talking about transportation. And one of the outcomes of the conversation, and I shared this with Celia, is you have to personalize the message. And it's what seemed to resonate with the conversation was, do you want to be home for dinner? And they said when you use that kind of message, that hits people and gets their attention. So I shared that with Celia that we might want to incorporate that in our messaging because that seemed to be important.
I think that certainly would resonate. Any other questions at this time? Yes.
Yeah, that's similar to the message where you see on the sign, if you were living here, you'd be home. Yeah, right. Which is, I think about that whenever I used to be commuting in the Bay Area. I've been having discussions with Celia just again about this eastern Placer County portion of the county and having it's a tough situation to incorporate into some of this, the polling and visitor surveying type of effort. That it's an area that I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but we have a hell of a lot more visitors, acres, than we do voters. And those visitors that we need to continue to allow to have a better experience, generate more sales tax, TOT tax. There's other things that they do that is important to get the voters behind this of that eastern Placer County to order, whether we make the difference or not, just to have it in the minds of the residents that this is a valid thing to be doing. And so since it's not financially really viable or even for determining statistically what the voters think, we're willing and looking to be able to do a better outreach than this countywide program perhaps can be in order to get the word out. We've already, with our transit visioning, which we've talked about in the past, started doing some very binding type of survey work where we were talking to people about if we were to get some sales tax money and you participated in that, what would you like to do with that? And what we found that would be probably much more successful for us is that we're seeing a percentage of people would be willing to spend approximately 45% for transit improvements, 45% for trail improvements, and about 10% for fill in the big potholes, road things. So that's the direction we're going, and then within those percentages, we're seeing what people would like to do with those percentages. And in our transit vision, which was kind of surprising because one of the key things for getting visitors on in other tourist areas is to have free transportation going around. But the local people were saying, rather than making it free, which is great, we'd rather see a greater frequency and longer periods of time throughout the year that the transportation runs. So my point here is just to say that we'd like to keep working real closely with this in a way that doesn't cross up anything, but we feel that it's beneficial to the whole county to have the support of the eastern Placer County folks behind this so that whether the vote carries it or not, we are providing services that will bring in the visitors and make it a better place for
Well, and
additional revenue generation.
I was just going to respond. The reality is that, you know, if the board does approve this to go onto the ballot and all of the jurisdictions do as well, the reality is to get a 2/3 majority, everybody is going to have to be on board. I mean, that's a high bar, and there's going to have to be a broad consensus, not just in South Placer, not just in the Auburn area, you know, the whole county has to be on board. So, you know, that's part of the outreach, the providing the information of the decisions that are going to be before the voters.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? None. Okay, thank you. Thanks. At this time, we are moving on to item K, selection of chair and vice chair for 2016. This is an action item.
Yeah. Oh, and just very briefly, this comes to the board every December. In our bylaws, we do have a rotation of the chairmanship and vice chairmanship, and it is by jurisdiction, because we also don't necessarily know who might be the appointees of the jurisdictions for the next year. So with that, the next jurisdictions that are up are the city of Roseville as chair and Placer County as the vice chair.
I'd be more than happy to nominate Supervisor Holmes to serve as vice chair.
Wow, that was quick.
Is this what happens when you don't attend a meeting?
So,
To show my appreciation, I'd second that.
okay, we have a first and second for the nomination of Placer's seat by Jim Holmes. All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Congratulations, Jim. Next is City of Roseville as chair.
Yes.
Move that the City of Roseville's designee be our chair for 2016. Second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Congratulations, Susan.
Thank you.
Moving on to item M, and that's the executive director's report, L. Sorry, I skipped one.
Yes, good morning again. I have quite a bit on today's executive director's report. Some mostly good news, but I'll start out with the less than ideal news. And that is that what we're hearing from the California Transportation Commission is the State Transportation Improvement Program is pretty much at zero for this round. It's what money there is, I believe, in terms of new money. In a good year, it would be about $5 billion. In a so-so year, it would be about $3 billion. What they've projected is $46 million. So, yeah, it's. I see the look on your face. I agree.
$6 million?
Yes. And so they are looking at essentially deprogramming projects and pushing them further out. It's a really negative situation.
Is that just enough money to pay the people who are pushing the paper? Is that what? Why anything? Why $46 million versus nothing?
That is just new capacity. The existing capacity within the program is still there. So, for example, we have a $3 million program for the third track project.
Okay.
That's still there.
Okay.
So in terms of all the people that thought, okay, there's 2 years worth of new money and we're going to move forward on that project, they're very disappointed.
And how much are they spending on the bullet train during this period?
Wherever it may go to and from.
Should go straight down.
I don't believe the bullet train is actually in the STIP, but that's
No, I meant they,
Yes,
the universal they.
This-
Kind of getting to Jeff's point about how people want to lump all this stuff together.
I believe that comment did come up at several of the town hall meetings. But in any case, I mean, in a sense, that also makes it even better that we received our shares of this money and built the Lincoln Bypass, and people are driving on that and have been for the last 3 years, rather than the situation we're at where a lot of counties are at where they were counting on that money and it's not there. But on the positive side, and it may end up affecting the STIP positively, it's hard to tell at this point, is that suddenly the feds got their act together and passed a 5-year transportation bill. I'm shocked as anyone. It's called the FAST Act, the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, which they always really spend a lot of time on a good acronym. We're still trying to sort out what all is in there. It just passed last week, and there's a lot of details. I mean, in the last act that they passed, it took 2 years for all the guidelines to come out, so there's a lot of devil in the detail. But some of the top-line positive things we're seeing out of this is that there is, for the first time ever, what they call a rail title. There's actually money in there specifically for rail, and under that there is money specifically for intercity rail, like the Capital Corridor Service. There are only 29 states that are eligible for that, and the thing that is really in our favor is we've got a shelf-ready project. The third track project the environmental was just approved by the PCTPA board last month. And so we're hitting the ground running. I've already had a side conversation with Union Pacific. As a side note, the new vice president for Western, I believe it's Western Operations, I'm not sure his exact title, is a gentleman by the name of Wes Lujan, who has a long history here in Placer County. I've known him for 15 years when he was with the Regional Council of Rural Counties. So this is a guy who knows the area, and I think is an ear that we can attract. So that's a great thing. I've already talked to SACOG about some sort of joint lobbying for this. I've met with the Capital Corridor staff to hit the ground running on this project. It may require phasing, which needs UP's agreement on that, but if we can do the Roseville part of it first, we're meeting with the city of Roseville to iron out a memorandum of understanding on how the parking is going to work and some of the details. So, we see money, we jump into action. So that's an exciting thing, because I will also add, in what I've seen so far in this FAST Act, is that it's a 5-year fully funded bill, but by adding $40 billion of non-user pay-fors, which I think is, Washington speak for smoke and mirrors. I mean, that's my take on it. So I think it's really important for us to get whatever money we can as soon as possible, because I'm concerned that by year 3, some of these estimated dollars may not actually appear. And so I think that's been the board's philosophy for a long time, is get the money now before it goes away. And that's what staff is working on in those terms. So that's kind of the good and bad one. I've got a couple more items. I've also was invited by Yuba County to come and talk to them about the Lincoln bypass, because they are now looking at starting up efforts on the Wheatland bypass, which I know Lee Bastion's in the audience from the Sheridan MAC. Be very interested to know that we have had a conversation and sort of strategizing how they might move forward, and how that might affect the remaining phase of the Lincoln bypass. So they have a very, very long road, pun intended, but I wanted to let the board know that they are starting up their efforts on that. I wanted to note that the California Association of Councils of Government is having their Regional Issues Forum in Monterey, March 30th to April 1st, and they're really encouraging board members of member agencies to attend. It's a really interesting conference, and if you're interested, I can provide more information on that. And then finally, I'm hoping that board members are as excited as I am about the event this afternoon on the I-80 Canyon Way interchange improvements that are affecting Crispin Cider, and we're having an event with the city of Colfax and with the Crispin Cider folks, as well as the state GoBiz people, to celebrate these improvements, and hope you can all join us. But this is another illustration about the connection between transportation and economic development, and a really important one. So that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Question.
Any questions?
The federal transportation bill, do we know how our local delegation voted?
It is my understanding that Congressman McClintock voted against it.
Has he issued any kind of statement as to why?
Not that I'm aware of, but I do intend to follow up with his staff and talk about, he has expressed in the past that to the extent there is money available in law, that he would be interested in helping us get it. So I'm hoping that will be the case.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Or Churchill.
Well, probably right. Thank you. Item M, board direction staff, anything at this time? No. Okay, N, we have some informational items for your review. Our next item is we are going to adjourn to closed session. The closed session is Government Code 54957, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Executive Director, and we'll be moving to Conference Room B at this time.
Out that door, hang right.
Okay, so I'm just, all right, okay. All right, so I'm just gonna, at this point, action from the closed session is one, to approve amendment number 6 to employment agreement between PCTPA and Executive Director Celia McAdam dated September 28, 2008, to extend term to December 31st, 2016, and provide a merit compensation increase as shown in attachment 4. And also number 2, adopt work elements of high emphasis and or additional goals for 2016, obtain and retain maximum transportation funding, operate the agency in a cost-effective manner, raise public awareness of transportation needs and funding. And with that, next regular meeting is January 27th, 2016. With that, this meeting's adjourned.